Hey, how's it going everyone? This is OddJob here. So in this video, I'm going to give you some running commentary of Inside Star Citizen Episode 3. So let's go ahead and get started.
So I'm going to show some of the updates with ArcCorp that we've been doing. So we've got kind of a lot more realistic placements with adverts. It's kind of feeling a bit more like Times Square. We've got some buildings that kind of weren't seen that often, like the meta-classical style, which kind of indicate kind of a past of ArcCorp where the fashion and the architectural style was a little different. Dotting around a few new building styles, a bit more unique shape to them. Then of course we've got something we've mentioned before, the donut building or donut tile.
Now, I think we can all agree that ArcCorp is amazing in both its size, scope, and scale, but one of the things that I'm always going to harp on is how does that translate to gameplay, because that's what I care about, and I believe most people just care about the gameplay. And one specific example that I do want to point out is, say for example, this particular building. While it's very cool looking, and people may go out there and search for it, once you actually see it, nobody's really going to care. What I would really love to see is this building has a purpose for players to actually use. Say for example, this could be an arena of some sort, say like a racing arena, in which people can actually go to this arena, park their ships, go into the elevator, and then it becomes its own instance. In other words, this particular building is a stadium, so then people can actually host things like races in there. So one of the things that Star Citizen has plenty of right now is a lot of racing vehicles, and what I would love to see is some ground racing going on in arenas like this. So we fly in, park our ships, go into that server instance, not trouble anybody else. We can have 50 people in there and we can do our own races. I feel like with the new Tumbrel Ranger, one of them being a racing series bike, that would be perfect for a stadium like this, in which you can actually set up races. It's a very cheap vehicle. People can probably just rent it very cheaply for the day, and we can actually have some fun that doesn't involve killing each other or running drugs. It would be something that's really nice to be able to get a competitive sport inside of Star Citizen, so that we can do something that's a little bit different, really get the racing scene going. So every one of these donut buildings can be a stadium, and then you can just put it all over ArcCorp. People can fly down to ArcCorp, go into these stadiums, we can schedule out events, really build a racing circuit around it, and just let players race around and have a little bit of fun.
Hello, Josh.
Hello.
Well, I think that sounds all very flat, don't you think? It's just following really what the ship is doing, and I think what I like most is that the noises from the thrusters, they're not just coming from the thrusters anymore, but the whole ship is now talking to you. We have these proxy points in the cockpit now that tell you what the sound of the ship is, as opposed to the what's the ship of like each individual thruster. We have a lot of military and airline pilots. How do things sound like when you're actually flying a fighter or a glider or airline, right, or an airline jet? And all these discussions went into 3.5.
The spaceship sounds that we're getting in 3.5 definitely takes a little bit of getting used to, and you know what, overall I think I really like it. I'm not really much of a combat person, but the only opinion that I just want to add, and this is not negative or positive, it's just an opinion, is that for luxury ships, for example this one here is the 600i, I kind of expected it to be much more quiet, much more subtle. I really don't see the 600i as a high performance ship like a sports car or something like that. It's much more like a luxury car. Riding around in a luxury car, they're very well refined, they're very smooth, you know, you don't really get a whole lot of bangs, clangs, and you know, loud engine noise. It's really only when you step on it that you get all of that sound. Now that might translate into the ship ramping up its speed much slower because it's trying to be really refined, and then of course if you step on it, if you turn on the afterburners, then it can be as loud as it wants to be, scaring the guests and whatnot. But until that happens, I just expect luxury ships to have its own flavor of sound. It's something that doesn't interrupt the guests that are on your ship, because it is a luxury ship, and that's kind of what I would expect. Again, this is just my personal opinion on that.
Paul Jones was building this thing, right? And like, we have to put components in the bike, and he literally had to put the components in between your legs because there's no more room on this thing because it's so small. I wanted to make something that was small and compact and something that could fit on your ship no matter what it was. The three versions of the Tumbrel Ranger are what we're calling the touring version, the combat version, and the tuner version. The touring version basically has a place for 3 mission boxes so that you can pick up a mission box, store it on there, and then take it to your destination. The combat version basically just has guns on it. The tuner version is the racing version. It's got that extra boost capability and an extra battery so you can go a little longer.
There's really not that much commentary that I want to add to the Tumble Ranger because we don't know enough about it, but the only thing that I do want to say is I really would like to start seeing some roads out on these planets so that we can actually use these ground vehicles and travel for extended period of times, or to kind of have a guided exploration experience, because it would be kind of nice to be able to have a road in which you're not bumping into a rock every 10 seconds, because the physics on low gravity planets, when you actually bump into a rock at speed, it's a little bit awkward and it kind of drags away from the enjoyment of just going out there and going fast with your vehicle. I can definitely see the racing version of this Ranger to be very popular because it is going to be the most accessible racing bike or racing vehicle that there is, and I certainly hope that we start getting stadiums or tracks around the universe in which we can actually go and race these bikes around, because that would be a whole lot of fun. I'm really glad that they didn't add weapons to this bike. It can just be a pure racing experience. I know people like explosions and all, but not every race needs to have guns involved in it. It would just be nice to have just a pure race, and I really hope that gets flushed out sometime in the next couple of years. Anyhow, that's all I have for this week. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you in the next video.
Game of Thrones.